I began to study these texts for today, my brain went into overload. There were just too many ways to go with them. And how do you settle on a single direction? I felt much like a dog, busy with one thing, then, ooh, squirrel. And I was off in a different direction. In addition, it was a busy week, with many demands on my attention, needs for care, lots of interruptions in between. And I began to see a bit how Jesus and the disciples must have felt. Everywhere they turned, they were confronted by needy people, the sick, the oppressed, the marginalized, the hungry, sheep who did not have a shepherd. So much so that the gospel tells us that they did not even have time to eat. Wasn't the first time this had happened. Earlier in Mark, we see Jesus at home, and so many people were crowding the door that several men had to dig a hole through the roof to get their paralyzed friend to him. And wherever he went, Jesus knew just what it was that the people needed, and he had compassion on them. I have to admit that my overwhelming feeling in reading this text was exhaustion. Good grief. Weren't they even entitled to a few hours of R&R? I think about the disciples. They had just come back from being sent out in pairs. It had been quite the experience. They were eager to tell their teacher all that they had seen and done. They'd been on the go constantly since being called by Jesus. They had seen him heal the lame and the sick, drive out demons. He had been teaching them things that had certainly touched their hearts, but more than likely were incomprehensible to them. Then they'd been sent out and suddenly found themselves able to cast out demons and cure the sick. They also had to deal with the death of John the Baptist and the knowledge that while Jesus was immensely popular among the people, it was becoming problematic for the Jewish authorities. They had to wonder and be a bit afraid of what that meant for them. So in addition to physical exhaustion, they were pretty worn out mentally as well. Whatever the disciples were feeling, Jesus, no doubt, was feeling exponentially. And so he wanted to take them away to a deserted place where they could all rest, where they could recharge their batteries. But no, that's not going to happen. There are all these people, and they all need something from him. Even though Jesus and the disciples set off for this deserted place, the people figured out where they were going and got there first. But Jesus doesn't see them as an interruption or an inconvenience. He sees them as sheep without a shepherd, and he teaches them. Many of them are likely good Jews who were very observant, but found that they were still hungry for more. The law guided their actions and behavior, but didn't necessarily feed their spirits. And so Jesus gave them what they needed, then, in that place. As an aside, what we don't see in this particular gospel lesson are the verses in between, where he also has concern for their bodily well-being. He feeds them, thousands of them. We also don't see that after dinner, he dismisses the crowd and tells the disciples to get in their boat and go on ahead of him, and he goes up to the mountainside to pray. No, instead, we fast forward to Jesus and the disciples landing in a different town, Jesus being recognized by the people at once, unlike the disciples who didn't recognize him in those earlier few verses as he was walking across the water. But that's another sermon. And immediately, it all starts again. There are people everywhere in need of healing, teaching, feeding. And again, Jesus meets their needs. There are a couple of things that out to me in these readings. One is that ministry is exhausting work. It is work that is never finished, sort of like dishes and laundry for a lot of us. It can be exhausting, not only draining our physical energy, but our spiritual energy as well. Jesus knew well the need to renew and recharge, and we have many examples of his doing so in the Gospels. We read time and time again that he went out alone to pray. And let me be clear, self-care for all of us is extremely important. But what we also read is that he always responds to the need of the person in front of him, even when we see that he is not initially inclined to do so. However, even in these instances, compassion, love, always went out. Somehow, he is always able to reach out to the other. Ministry is hard work. And I'm certain that you all understand that I'm not only speaking here about what professional ministers do. These readings about sheep and shepherds are not meant just to be about priests. We are all called to be shepherds and ministers. We're called in our very baptism, and we vow to do so. Whether we work outside the home in white-collar jobs, blue-collar jobs, whether we're stay-at-home moms or dads, or retired, we're still called to minister to others. Many of you know that I've worked in hospice for the last 8 years. I love my work, my patients, their families. But there are days, just like there are for all of us. You know, those typically are the days that I finally get to go in my office and close the door, sit down and take a breath. And then I get that call, sending me to the hospital to talk to another family, to be with them as they try to make this difficult decision. And sometimes I think I just don't have it in me. There are times and days that we all think we have to deal with one more problem. If we have to break up one more fight between the kids, we have to deal with one more problematic person we're going to screen. I'm sure Jesus knew that feeling. And I'm even more certain that the disciples did. So we do what we can to take care of ourselves, to ensure that we are doing what we need to do. We try to set aside prayer time, time to relax, family time, quiet time, whatever it takes to recharge our batteries. Some of us need more than others. We all know that sometimes it just doesn't happen. One of the kids gets sick or there's an emergency, and at the moment, we just don't know how we're going to be able to rise to the occasion once again. But we know we have to. When we find ourselves thinking we simply can't respond to another call, think back on the collect for today. God knows what we need, even when we don't. When we don't have a clue what to ask for that will help us get up and get back out there. And most of you probably had the same experience that I have, and that's that after whining to God about what I'm being asked to do this time, I often find that I was just where I needed to be in that moment. God knew what I needed for that interaction. And like the psalmist says to us today, wherever we are, God, as our shepherd, brings us to green pastures and still waters, revives our souls, walks with us, giving us all and more that we need until our own cup runs over. So trust the shepherd